France didn't whisper this time. It slammed the door and walked away. Because what's happening here isn't a scheduling mix-up, a misunderstood invite, or a polite European snub wrapped in silk scarves and air kisses. This is Paris, the most controlled, hierarchical, unforgiving fashion capital on Earth, quietly deciding that one name has become more trouble than prestige. And that name is Meghan. Behind the polished runways and champagne-lit salons, something snapped. The smile stopped, the tolerance evaporated, and suddenly the woman who once floated through elite circles on borrowed relevance found herself frozen out. Not publicly shamed, not officially banned, but erased in the way Paris erases people it no longer respects. This wasn't paparazzi fatigue. This wasn't politics. This was power reclaiming control. Inside Paris fashion and political circles, the frustration had been simmering for years. Designers whispered. Stylists rolled their eyes. Brand executives exchanged knowing looks every time her name came up, because to them, she wasn't a fashion figure, she was an interruption. Someone who drifted into spaces she didn't build, attached herself to legacy she didn't study, and turned centuries-old craft into a backdrop for her own narrative. And the word that kept coming up, again and again, was brutal. Culture vulture. Not said lightly, not said publicly, but said consistently. They accused her of misunderstanding fashion's history, ignoring its discipline, and treating Paris like a stage set instead of a system built on blood, money, lineage, and unspoken rules. In Paris, invitations aren't kindness, they're currency. And once that currency loses value, the entire system reacts. What pushed things over the edge wasn't one outfit or one appearance. It was accumulation. Showing up without real ties, aligning herself with designers she barely knew, generating headlines that swallowed entire collections whole, turning carefully curated events into background noise for yet another personal storyline. Paris tolerates arrogance if it comes with artistry. It tolerates spectacle if it comes with legacy, but it does not tolerate narrative hijacking. So the response came the Paris way. Quiet, surgical, ruthless. No dramatic announcement, no official ban, just firmer enforcement. Less flexibility, fewer indulgences. Visas suddenly harder to secure. Event organizers suddenly unavailable. Last-minute appearances no longer accommodated. Doors that once opened with a nod now remained closed without explanation. That's how Paris freezes people out. Influence doesn't shout. It evaporates access. And the message, according to insiders, was unmistakable. Don't come back. And don't attach yourself to a culture that doesn't want you. This wasn't framed as punishment, it was framed as protection. Protection of identity, protection of hierarchy, protection of an ecosystem that sees itself as sacred, not a playground for celebrity reinvention. To Paris, she wasn't being misunderstood, she was being misaligned. And once Paris decides someone is misaligned, the consequences don't stay in France. Because Paris is the heartbeat of global fashion. When it turns cold, Milan watches, London takes notes, New York recalibrates. The fashion world is small, interconnected, and merciless when preserving its pecking order. One quiet freeze becomes a global chill, but the collapse didn't stop in Europe. In the Middle East, the door didn't just close, it never reopened. Dubai, a city that thrives on celebrity, spectacle, and global attention, reportedly made its decision with chilling efficiency. Too risky. Too volatile, too unpredictable. This wasn't about etiquette or optics. This was about stability. Dubai trades in image control. It welcomes figures who elevate its brand, not ones who drag controversy behind them like a trailing shadow. Sources familiar with the region say her name now triggers caution instead of excitement, not curiosity, not intrigue. Alarm. And beneath that alarm sit deeper concerns, financial questions, governance whispers, and growing unease around Arcueil. Even rumors of scrutiny are enough to scare off partners who don't gamble on uncertainty. Dubai doesn't wait for explosions. It avoids the fuse altogether. Saudi Arabia followed the same path. No invitations, no outreach, no strategic interest. Once open to celebrity partnerships, the kingdom reportedly saw too much downside and too little control. In regions where public image is engineered with surgical precision, unpredictability isn't edgy, it's disqualifying. Stack these rejections together and the pattern becomes impossible to ignore. Europe cooling. The Middle East closing ranks. Fashion houses stepping back. Executives going silent. This isn't a smear campaign. It's institutional withdrawal. And while institutions retreat, the personal cracks grow harder to hide. According to those close to the situation, Harry's absence has become noticeable. and telling. Joint appearances that once felt obligatory are now rare. When he does appear, it's increasingly alone. And the conditions attached to those appearances speak volumes. Sources say he now accepts interviews only with strict boundaries, explicit promises that his marriage and her controversies will not be discussed. That alone signals a shift seismic enough to shake the foundation they once stood on. For years, he embraced the shared narrative, the shared grievances, the shared battles. Now, he appears to be carving out distance, not loudly, not dramatically, but deliberately. Survival mode, preservation, an attempt to keep at least some doors from slamming shut forever. Attempts to rebuild standing in the UK have reportedly gone nowhere. Palace sources remain unmoved. From their perspective, bridges weren't burned, they were demolished, and there is no path back without consequences he seems unwilling to face. This divergence is creating tension that insiders say can no longer be disguised. She leans into confrontation, framing rejection as persecution. He leans into retreat, trying to lower the temperature. Those strategies cannot coexist forever. And Hollywood? Hollywood is watching, calculating, choosing distance. Entertainment executives are famously risk-averse, and she has become a case study in what not to touch. Projects stall, conversations die. Agents hesitate, not because she lacks visibility, but because she generates the wrong kind. The fear is simple. Work with her and you're next. Next to be accused. Next to be dragged into a feud. Next to lose control of your own narrative. That fear isn't hypothetical. Collaborations have already collapsed, loudly and publicly, each one reinforcing the same lesson. The industry doesn't reward chaos, it quarantines it. And once someone is branded toxic, that label spreads faster than praise ever could. Fashion says she doesn't understand the culture. Middle Eastern partners say she's too risky. Entertainment insiders say she's radioactive. Legal observers say scrutiny is rising. Different sectors, same conclusion, and this is where the reality becomes inescapable. She isn't running out of publicity, she's running out of places to go. Not physically, institutionally. Fewer platforms willing to host her. Fewer brands willing to associate. Fewer countries willing to indulge her presence. Each accusation, each grievance, each scorched earth response has narrowed her options further. For years, exclusion was her narrative. Now it's operational. And Paris? Paris has already moved on. And here's the part no one around her wants to say out loud, because once you say it, you can't undo it. Silence has arrived. Not outrage, not backlash, not even ridicule. Silence. The most lethal verdict any institution can hand down. Because silence means decisions have already been made in rooms she'll never enter again. It means the phone stops ringing, the emails go unanswered, and the polite excuses quietly expire. This is what institutional exile looks like. There's no dramatic showdown, no final headline announcing her fall, just the slow disappearance of access. The quiet recalibration where her name moves from asset to liability on internal spreadsheets, where risk teams flag her not for what she's done, but for what might happen if she's involved. And that's the moment she's in now. The tragedy, if there is one, is that this outcome wasn't inevitable. Institutions forgive arrogance. They forgive mistakes. They even forgive scandals, if handled with discretion. What they do not forgive is being publicly attacked by someone who still expects access. That was the fatal miscalculation. She didn't just walk away from institutions, she scorched them on the way out. Fashion houses, royal circles, media executives, former allies. Every burned bridge was framed as a moral victory, a stand against oppression, a refusal to be silenced. But institutions don't argue. They don't clap back. They don't defend themselves. They close ranks. And now the cost of that strategy is coming due. Because exclusion is no longer rhetorical, it's procedural. It shows up in denied visas, in meetings canceled without rescheduling, in invitations that simply never arrive. It shows up in entire regions deciding she's not worth the complication. Paris didn't make an announcement. Dubai didn't issue a statement. Saudi Arabia didn't need to explain itself. They simply opted out. And the entertainment world followed suit, not out of malice, but fear. Fear of becoming collateral damage. Fear of losing narrative control. Fear of being dragged into public warfare they never signed up for. The irony is brutal. For someone who built a brand around visibility, the greatest threat now is invisibility. Meanwhile, the personal dynamic continues to fracture under the pressure. Those close to the situation describe a widening emotional and strategic gap. She doubles down, interpreting every closed door as proof of conspiracy, persecution, bias. He withdraws, increasingly careful, increasingly selective, increasingly quiet. That difference matters, because when one partner escalates and the other retreats, the center cannot hold. Harry's attempts to distance himself aren't loud, but they're unmistakable. Separate appearances, narrow interview terms, an insistence on keeping certain subjects off limits. These aren't the moves of someone confident in shared momentum, they're the moves of someone trying to contain damage. And institutions notice that too. They see the fracture, they see the hesitation, they see the lack of unity. And nothing makes power structures more uncomfortable than instability they can't control. Attempts to rebuild bridges have reportedly gone nowhere. The palace remains unmoved. From their perspective, there's no ambiguity. The attacks were public. The accusations were repeated. The damage was deliberate. There is no reset button. And Hollywood? Hollywood has already reclassified her, not as misunderstood, not as controversial, but as unpredictable. That's the category that kills careers. Unpredictability means legal teams get involved. Crisis managers hover. Contracts grow heavier. Exit clauses multiply. Suddenly, every potential collaboration comes with too many questions and not enough upside. Executives don't say this publicly. They don't have to. Their silence does the talking. What's striking is how consistent the assessments have become across industries and continents. Fashion calls her unserious. Middle Eastern partners call her unstable. Entertainment insiders call her radioactive. Legal observers whisper about scrutiny and exposure. Different languages, same verdict. And this is where the reality hardens. There are fewer cities left that want her, fewer brands willing to risk alignment, fewer platforms willing to host her narrative. Each public grievance narrowed the field. Each accusation hardened resistance. Each demand for validation pushed institutions further away. For years, she framed herself as excluded by design. Now, exclusion isn't a story, it's infrastructure. And the most dangerous part? She's still fighting the last war, while the world has already moved on. Institutions don't wait for closure. They adapt. They rewrote. They replace. The fashion world finds new faces. Hollywood finds safer bets. Governments choose calmer partners. Life continues, without explanation. And that's the moment that changes everything. Because criticism can be weaponized, outrage can be monetized, even scandal can be spun. Silence cannot. Silence means the audience has left the room. As the year unfolds, the map of her influence continues to shrink. Fewer allies, fewer invitations, fewer meaningful platforms left to occupy. And while she may still command attention online, attention without access is just noise. Power doesn't live in headlines, it lives in doors that open quietly. And right now, those doors are closing, not one by one, but in unison. Paris has already shut the gate. Dubai never looked back. Saudi Arabia isn't interested. Hollywood is wary. Fashion is hostile. The palace is done. And the man who once stood beside her appears to be stepping back, trying to salvage whatever future remains. This isn't about one mistake. It's about accumulation. Every fight added weight. Every accusation drained trust. Every scorched earth response reduced tolerance. Until momentum turned. And once momentum turns against you, institutions don't need to fight. They just wait. Because the final stage isn't downfall, it's irrelevance. And that's the one outcome no narrative can rewrite.